Let's have a look at this BMI application, first of all using a structure, and we'll look at some of the dangers that you might encounter when you're writing software. So I've created this new type, this struct here, which has an age, weight, height and body mass index, and I'm calling this human. I've also got two functions that take a human as a parameter, and we can see those here. So display human just writes out information about them, their weight, their height, their body mass index, and if their BMI is over 25, it adds a little star decorator on the end. Nothing particularly interesting there. This one's a bit more interesting in that it actually calculates the so-called body mass index. It takes a pointer to a human as a parameter. So a pointer is smaller than a complete copy. So whatever we pass to this function, it is a reference to the original data, as I'll show you. And we can then work out the BMI and overwrite the existing value. So we calculate it and overwrite it. So if we go to main.c, where we're going to test this now, you'll see we create an instance of this data type person1. So let's run the code and stop at that point. So I'm going to run and I'm going to put a breakpoint in. Okay, now I'm going to directly access the properties of this structure. Okay, so I'm going to go step over with F6 on this thing, and we set the properties of person1 directly. We then calculate the body mass index, and notice I'm passing the address of person1. So person1 is going to be mutated. It's going to be changed here in place. So if we step in to this function, and that'll be this one, step into with F7. This is the address of the parameter itself, and if we keep going, so now we should find that person1, if we look at it, has his or her BMI calculated, and now I display it. We can step into this one as well. Okay, and if it's greater than 25, print the star, otherwise don't. Okay, so key point with this is that it is the address of person1 that I pass as the first parameter, and in this case the only one, because I actually want to modify it. I want the function to directly modify it. Right, this is not only fast, but also this relates to how classes will work, as you'll see next. Okay, I'm going to create another person2 now, and this time I'm going to initialize it with what's called a designated initializer. So in more modern versions of C, we can instantiate all the parameters directly like this. So I'm going to step over that line. Now I've initialized the body mass index with 0. That's obviously wrong. So I'm now got to remember to calculate it properly. So we do that, and then we display it, and that one's big, so we get a little star on the end. Okay, so that's how it's intended to be used. Now let's look at the sort of common mistakes that you as a programmer might make. And it's less likely here because we've got all our code in one place, but when you get big complex software, you might create a person in one part of the code, and then maybe in response to some event later on, you might calculate the body mass index a bit later on, for example. So in this case, I've missed, it's a classic mistake, I've missed something very important, and that is I forgot to actually initialize person3. Okay, so I've created person3, but I haven't actually given it any parameters like I did up here. And I've gone straight in to calculate the thing. So we step in. Now height is probably 0. So we're going to have a 0 divided by a 0 here. Now with floating point numbers, you sort of get you get a result, and when you look at it, when we display it, you'll see infinity. It's decided 0 by 0 is infinity in its great wisdom. Okay, which is the correct by the definition of floating point. So that's number one. Forgot to initialize, or I tried to perform the calculation before I actually gave it the data. Okay, in this contrived example that might seem unlikely, but in broader terms that's a well-known bug that recurs quite often. Okay, now this next one I've actually remembered to initialize it. But then what I didn't do was remember to calculate the BMI. And I've gone on and tried to display it before I calculated. And sure enough, we get a nonsense value of 0. So that's mistake number 2. And this is the last one, is the most sinister of all. And I would say, if I think about my own mistakes that I've made in the past, this is the one that causes most of them. And that is that I've initialized person 2 back up here. All right. And if you remember, that had a 37.89 body mass index. So what I'm going to now do is say, well, this person has now lost weight from 97 down to 89. So I expect this figure to change. So I go in and I change the property directly myself and then display it, and the BMI is not changed. And that's because I have forgotten to update the calculations. So the issues here are that we are able to access these parameters directly. Wouldn't it be nice if when we changed them it was automatically recalculated? All right. And in C++ you can do just that.